We got a brand new patch here today after an open letter from Fatshark. And this patch includes a lot of stuff. So let me hit the high notes of what this patch includes in my typical fashion of upfronting the knowledge. Then you can decide if you want to stick around and talk about more stuff and see the nitty and gritty here. So a huge bit of overhauling has been done to the suppression system. So any of the yellow dudes, for the easiest way to explain what I'm talking about, have now had their suppression time increase, I guess you could say. And that is actually huge. So scab and dregs will now completely be suppressed far easier in the game. It's going to very much drastically change the top two difficulties in how we play them. We have a lot of changes to the Ogrins and their perks now being properly fixed. A lot of really good buffs for the Psyker, especially its Quell when it comes to, Peril Generation, especially when it comes to the Void Strike and the Trauma Staff. A lot of nerfs to a lot of blessings, so stuff like the Crucian Roulette will no longer work if you empty your ammo clip and then switch to melee. That is not going to work for you anymore. We've had a lot of different nerfs here to Shred and some other blessings that will, I think, really drastically change the landscape of what a lot of people use. The conventional bleed build and crit build of the Zealot seems to now be pushed far back to the combat blade and not onto other weapons, with a lot of different expansion points from there. Some other little things that I wanted to bring up here in this portion before we get into it is, I'm looking through like my notes of stuff. Rend and Brittleness now got a pretty nice little buff here so that they don't actually create any negative values. They will do their proper, if not better, damage against flak armor, which is a really good one there. Brain Burst itself has had a lot of really good tweaks, like stuff like being able to target a Brain Burst through a railing or a fence has now been fixed, which is very, very, very nice. So there are a lot of little tiny changes that actually have a pretty big impact upon the game. But if that's really all you wanted to know, you just kind of want to read the patch notes for yourself or experience from whatever they are, you can go ahead and shut the video down. I'll save you the rest of the video so you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. You can find the link to the patch notes, though, in the description. So if you want to read them for yourself, by all means, go for it. Also, if you are heading out, please do not forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. Any one of those things does help me out in a huge, huge way, and it's a great way to give back to any content creator you watch. Lastly, here, we will be testing all of these patch notes and showing off as much as we can on my Twitch. I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at around 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific daytime, or standard time, whatever time of the year it is. So please go and head out or check out my Twitch. You can find that linked in the comments below. So if you are heading out, have a good one. Take care. But for those that are sticking around, let's get started with the patch notes of 1.0.22 for Warhammer 40,000 Darktide. And we got a lot to break into here. So starting off, we have the roadmap. And if this is your first time watching a patch notes video for me, I've highlighted everything. So the things that I really want to point out that are green, those are some sort of buff or good thing that's happened. If it's purple, it is a particularly good or strong buff that really will change some things, or it's really worth talking about in a big way. And if it's red, it's a nerf, or it's something that's just been removed and will change, something that has been removed and will change the way that some characters or whatnot play. So it's just worth talking about, and I guess a more negative light. So as it pertains to the roadmap, we do not have an updated one because they're saying that they've pivoted their dev process on adding changes in accordance with the feedback we have received since launch. So that's good. I like to see that they're addressing the things that the community wants, not the things that they think that they need because of whatever, blah, blah, blah. But this also means certain features we hope to have in the game by now have been pushed back. And I hope that doesn't mean crafting too far. If this was like a, hey, let's get this hot fix patch out, because that's the big thing here, is there's no real content in this patch. This is fixing the current things in the game, making them operable for, I would hope, a major content patch to come in the, again, hopeful near future. We do not know. There's been no indication. Hopefully this is something that happens in the first couple of weeks of February, because we need that crafting system. Yeah, it's great to see a lot of these changes, and I think that the suppression change is going to make the game a lot easier for us. And once we get access to a crafting system, the game's going to be even more easy. So even more easy? It would be even easier. So I do really hope that we get some big stuff to kind of change the way that that's going to flow from here on out. But just to kind of point those things out, I don't really want to go over the third-party services thing. It's about the app that we use to take a look at the store, because I have a bunch of just side thoughts on that anyway. But going through some of the weapon changes, and to be fair, to keep in mind here, none of these categories that say weapons or blessings or feats or whatever are pertinent. Just ignore it, because there are blessing improvements in the non-blessing section and weapon fixes in the non-weapon section. But for all intents and purposes, let's talk about some weapons. Fixed an issue where the Akatran Mark II heavy pistol wasn't affected by feats and blessings that increase reload speed or attack speed. So nice to see that has been fixed for the las pistol. The balance tweak for the Thunderhammer is here, and it is here in a big way. So this has increased the damage against flak and carapace armor respectively from 75 to 90, and carapace from 1% to 25 for light attacks, and heavy attacks from 75 to 90, and light attacks, heavy attacks against carapace from 20 to 25. Let's jump over to the game real quick and let me show you something. What that means is, it says the mod. The mod is not the flat damage that the weapon is doing, it's referring to penetration. So if you look at penetration here, it says light attack damage versus flak armored, 59.4 to 90. It used to be 59.4 to 75. So this is not that the weapon does 20% more flak and carapace armor. It now has the capability to do 20% more if your penetration roll is at an appropriate level. Keep in mind, remember, this roll can never be higher than 80% in the current iteration of the game, so you'll never actually get a 90 on the roll. But at 54%, I'm already doing more damage versus flak armor than I was prior to this patch. So that is extremely worth mentioning. Same thing here with carapace armor. Remember, this was a much different value, and now I'm doing far more, so it is a nice thing to see. I mean, that's not even my really good Thunderhammer. I guess this is my good Thunderhammer. And now I'm doing 82% bonus damage versus flak armor. So you can really see that this is going to be having a lot heavier of a punch, and it's really great to take a look at. Moving back in here to the patch notes, fixed a bug where you couldn't use your weapon special action while blocking with the power sword or with the blaze force sword and attack axes. I thought I was just dumb. Nice to see that's actually a bug, but I still am dumb. But fixed an issue where the purgation flamer could play an unnecessary animation on wield. That was nice because it would really piss me off. It would make it far more unwieldy to use. I fixed a bug where some of the Ogre weapons didn't receive attack speed buffs as intended, which is lovely. Fixed damage calculation code for the stat screen for weapons. This affected weapons that shot projectiles that both explode and have impact damage. So, if you were using the Grenadier Gauntlet, or I think the plasma gun kind of falls into this, you now should notice that this is going to help out with the damage calculation for those weapons on the stat screen. So, it is always a good thing to see. Increased responsiveness of shooting after aiming down sights with the Headhunter autogun. I'm always a big fan of any buff to autoguns because I think that they're in a really weird spot and I want them to be better. I don't want them to outclass las guns because the laser gun should always feel better than a kinetic gun, but still, I want them to be better than they are. Added an ability for the Vrax Headhunter autogun to be able to cancel reload by using weapon special, which is your little kind of like rifle butt in the face thing. Here's your first big one, though. Well, aside from the Thunderhammer. Aligned the Trauma Staff with the Void Strike Staff. Peril costs to be more in line with each other. So why this is a major buff here is that it means that the full charges with a good Trauma Staff went from around 45% peril per shot here, now down to 25%. That is a massive buff for Trauma. Void Strike, it's not going to be as much. It's more kind of like, if Void Strike was at the top and Trauma was at the bottom, it's more bringing Trauma up to like 75% of where Void Strike is and kind of stabilizing them out. Like it doesn't feel as much of a buff for Void Strike. It just feels like a better one for the Trauma. But nice to see that Void Strike got a little bit of a tickle in its pickle regardless. I have had so much caffeine I can't even breathe right. Fixed a bug on the blast on the Grenadier Gauntlet heavy attack that was incorrectly using light attack damage. Very nice here. The bolt gun crosshair has been fixed so that it would look wider while crouching. So this is something that I wanted to highlight for a specific reason. That there are a lot of weapons. I think another example of this would be the stub revolver. That when you crouch down, the crosshairs, the spread looks wider. Now this says look wider. I don't know if that means that it was actually effectively wider as far as the game's perception of that crosshair spread was. If I crouched with a bolt gun, it would spread the crosshairs. Did that mean that the actual cone were represented by that crosshair, or did the game actually treat it like they weren't spread and it was shooting at a tighter angle actually? So it makes me wonder how this actually affects other guns. Are the other guns just visually glitched, or is it an actual in-code glitch that's that's actually causing a wider cone of fire? So very interested to see if this is going to start applying to more weapons down the line. Fixed an issue where the Rift Haven, where the Force Staff and the Purgation Flame reverse flames would not hit enemies if aborted too early. So they will now actually properly hit enemies. And fixed a bug where the second attack on the light combo with the Crusher dealt less damage than intended while activated. I don't know what this means, because the Crusher for me, you activate and you swing and it cannot do a second attack. So maybe you guys can help me out with that in the comment section below. I've not been able to find a use case for this because, like I said, once I've charged up the Crusher and swing, it explodes and I lose the charge. So, and it completely resets the combo for me too. So I don't really understand that one. So I put it in green because I love the Crusher. Fixed bugs where you couldn't chain the parry special action from push attack and push follow-ups on Catachan swords. Yet to be tested, but that sounds like it's a really good buff here. Fixed attacks that incorrectly were unaffected by weapon stats. So the Mark III Butcher Cleaver is now properly affected when during the second attack in a special combo, and the Power Sword here, attack and 3 light combo has now been correctly boosted by weapon stats. So basically, it's a passive buff to pretty much all the weapons included in this list, because now their weapon stacks are actually kicking in on the thing that it was not kicking in for before, right here. So the light to heavy combo was not having its weapon stats factored in. It is now. You know, that's going to be so annoying to just like, imagine you as a developer having to, okay, yeah, well, let's talk about the cleaver. Well, which one? Which mark? Like, I don't know. The one that looks like this. Well, you got to tell me the mark, Brad. I don't know which one you're talking about. Like, oh, I had a headache. Added a chain action between aiming down sights, charge shot, and weapon special action on the Hellbore lasguns to make that sequence a bit more responsive, and fixed a bug where the activated push follow-up attack with the heavy eviscerator would not stick to some enemies, and changed how the Hellbore lasguns shoot action is triggered, making it easier to chain charged shots. I've yet to test this one, but it feels like a very good buff to the Hellbore lasgun. You guys can let me know in the comment section below how you have used it. I actually don't like the Hellbore lasgun, period. So it's going to be slow for me to want to test this one out, but go ahead and let me know. I've tested a lot of other stuff, but not that. With blessings, this is not the only blessings that are changed. A lot more are changed later on. So fix an issue with thrust blessing having limited functionality with revved up attacks from chain weapons, only affecting the first tick of damage instead of the entire attack. So thrust will now work better on any and all chain weapons. Fix the issue that blessings get the correct bonus according to their tier. This is now properly working. Fixed an issue where some blessings could be active when weapons was not wielded, when a weapon was not wielded. There's no A in there and it threw me off, missing an article. That is now going to be really crucial. If you are using Crucian Roulette, you will no longer get that bonus. And that is actually spelled out specifically in the patch notes later. Fix an exploit where Shred Weapon Blessing allows you to keep critical strike bonuses when wielding another weapon. Again, that has been fixed. So a lot of the kind of juggling of weapons to try to use a blessing past what its use case was, right? Like using a melee weapon's blessing on a ranged weapon has now been kind of patched and fixed away, unfortunately. For enemies, fix an issue with Bulwark not getting staggered correctly by stun grenades, so you can now use them reliably on your Zealot. And fix an issue with bleed blessings applying bleed on 0 damage attacks. This means if you are attacking a Bulwark with your combat blade on a Zealot that is using the bleed build, you will no longer build bleed stacks. If it does 0 damage, it will not build bleed. That's very important to know if you're using that quite a bit. Now this whole chunk here, it's changed the way that suppression works for the dregs and the scabs. It used to be that the dregs were pretty much like immune to suppression, and that is no longer the case here. So here's just like a look at this one right there. Tweaked scab and dreg gunner suppression immunity duration from 1.75 to 2.25 to 0.25 to 0.5. I'm going to pop back into the game real quick. and I'm going to use my bolter. I'm going to show you exactly how this works. I'm just going to shoot. Look at that, man. They're just going to start running around if I start killing people. Let's reload. Let's reload. Like, they don't usually run around like that. And especially if I'm using the crusher, which builds a bunch of stagger, like, it's going to make things run around far more than like, look at those guys back there. They didn't used to do that. They didn't used to just kind of run around willy-nilly as far away from this thing going off as it is. It used to be you have to really get on top of them. So this is going to make Heresy and Damnation, look at that, man, they're just running away, far easier, because now things are going to be staggered. They're going to be suppressed more easy, or they're going to suppress easier, and that is really going to change the flow of the game. It's going to make it so that range things that used to really kind of lock us down and keep us in a bad spot are no longer going to be able to do that as easily in Damnation. I mean, look at this. I'm over here hitting this guy, and those guys are, look at that. See, he's running away from this. And he's really far away from me. So this is a massive change to the game, and I have not done enough testing in Damnation to see what this is like, but this is very much going to change the flow of combat, especially when it comes to the overwhelming amount of range fire you deal with in the higher difficulties. Moving on. Feats and abilities. Fixed issue where kinetic deflection did not pause passive quelling, resulting in being able to tank some enemies indefinitely. So I guess that this will... The issue here is, if you were using a non-force sword to basically tank something indefinitely with your passive quelling, then it's not going to work that way anymore. It's going to work the same way that the force sword did prior to this patch. So it's still probably the best in slot in that column, but you're no longer going to be able to just tank things infinitely. You'll be tanking everything as if you had the force sword equipped, if you want to have a comparison point, if you played Psyker and know what I'm talking about here. So it just removes that indefinite amount of tanking. Fix an exploit where switching weapons before exploding after 100% peril brain burst would prevent you from exploding. Very niche. It's kind of tricky, not reliable to actually get off, but it's nice to see that it's been fixed regardless. Fixed a bug where rank 3 Fire Frenzy Blessing didn't give the correct damage increase. So it used to, they say it like it didn't give enough. No, it wasn't. In the writing, it would say 8%, but it would actually give you 80%. So, jumping over to the game, this says gain 8% power increase. Used to say it would effectively in the code give 80%. So my braced auto gun is now poopy, but still nice to see that it's fixed. Unfortunate that it is. If you were relying on Fire Frenzy, you cannot anymore. Fix an issue where Kinetic Flare could sometimes trigger on the Ogre Bulwark Shield. This is really nice because if it would trigger on the Bulwark Shield, it wouldn't kill anything, but you'd still have that lockdown happening. So it's nice to see that that has now been fixed and you won't actually have it going off. It's a nice little kind of somewhat passive buff to the Psyker. Fix an issue with the Sharpshooter Volley Fire combat ability. Reloading while activating should now abort reload animation. Let's couple that with fix an issue where if a Sharpshooter would trigger Volley Fire when reloading and having the Sustain Fire feat, the reload animation would continue to play. And this is just kind of a nice buff to the Vet ult, and it kind of removes the wasted time when you hit the ult midway through a reload. So you're definitely going to notice this if you're playing with, say, a bolt gun or an auto gun that's going to have a bit of more of a timier reload. You'll notice this quite a bit, and that's quite nice. Fix an exploit where the users could gain toughness from the Preacher's dash ability without you consuming the ability charge. So if you were using your Zealot as a buff, or I'm sorry, as a heal bot, you no longer can do that, unfortunately. So a mild nerf, it's just an exploit either way. Fix an issue where Rend Blessing and Brittleness could give negative bonuses from weapons. This one's very nice here because, like I said, this actually makes it so that Rending and Brittleness actually properly reduce flak damage for weapons that already did more flak damage than unarmored. So typically due to high penetration ratings, this would be an issue, and it is no longer going to be an issue. So if your weapon did a high amount of damage to flak above unarmored, it would confer a negative penalty or something of that sort. It is now no longer the case. Fix an issue where Weapon Blessing Crucian Roulette critical strike chance would be applied to melee attacks. That is not going to work for you anymore. So if you were playing your Zealot or whatever, relying on this to give you a little bit of a critical attack boost, it won't work, unfortunately. Improve the targeting and tagging the targeting of tagging and a brain, god damn, improve the targeting of tagging and brain burst through fences, gaps, and rails, etc. So a nice little buff here to the Psyker on special maps, specific maps. Fixed issues with the Ogren Skullbreaker feats passives not working as intended. So, Intimidating Presence now only affects heavy attacks. The ult attack speed now affects weapons other than the shovel and the cleaver, so that's really nice. So if you're using the shield and club, that will work with it. The hard as nails feat no longer breaks Intimidating Presence, which is the 10% attack speed buff. Raging Bull increased damage still does not apply to cleave targets. This may be intended functionality though, so I assume since they fixed these issues, it might be something that actually needs to be maybe reworked or what have you. Fixed an issue with the Blazing Spirit Blessing on the Trauma Staff and Void Strike Staff that only applied Warp Fire to directly hit enemies on crit and not enemies hit by explosion. So nice that it's just going to apply to everything that it basically gets touched. Fixed issue where Kinetic Overload could target a demon host. So nice that that's not going to happen. And fixed an issue that Punishment did not give the Preacher stun immunity. It is now fixed there. Fixed an issue where the Toughness Regeneration Speed Curio only gave bonuses to the Toughness Regeneration Delay of Coherency. Just, it's not a massive change here, but it's still really nice to see that those curios are going from being useless without specific blessings and perks to now actually having a little bit of a use. Fixed issue with feats identifiers overriding each other. And fix the issue so that enemies within, enemies without no longer regenerates toughness while disabled. This is kind of a really weird one. It is ultimately a minor nerf to the Zealot's ability to kind of regenerate toughness, but it's still one that's kind of a little funky because it's kind of hard to replicate. But fix an issue with Sustained Fire Blessing for all Hellbore las guns, always making them better. Quietude feat did not work with the Transfer Peril Blessing. And fix an issue so you no longer block broken when at 0 stamina with Connect Deflection. It would sometimes actually kill you, so it's nice to see that's been fixed for the Psyker. Fix an issue where Corruption Resistance Grimoires did not affect the corruption gain from Grimoires, has now been fixed. And fixed an exploit where Shred Weapon Blessing allowed you to keep critical strike bonuses when wielding another weapon. So that has been fixed twice now. It's weird that some of the blessing fixes are in this section that says feats and abilities, but I guess they're marking that as an ability. I don't know, it's kind of odd. Crash fixes, I've just put this in purple because it's nice to see crash fixes being fixed. Crashed when closing the item detail view when purchasing an item. That sometimes would result in a pretty easily replicated crash for me. Various cosmetic changes related to clipping and deformation when it happens to, like, say, your helmet piece and whatnot. Fix an issue where effects for being suppressed under fire from enemies but not actively taking damage were missing or inconsistently triggered. So nice that that's been fixed. Fixes so that power level buffs now affect stagger and cleave as damage. What that means is this: 6% power for 1.3 seconds on close range kill. That's a power buff. So power is supposed to increase your stagger, your cleave, and your damage depending on the weapon that it's applying to. So it's nice to see that this has been fixed in whatever capacity. Does require some testing, but it's nice to see that that's there so we can see how this really affects a lot of weapons, because it might have felt underwhelming before. And then lastly, fixed issue with damage numbers in the Psychanium that sometimes displayed the wrong color when a critical strike was made. An example here would be this Crusher. When I would use the Crusher and charge it up and charge, that's supposed to be a guaranteed crit because I'm using Zealot, right? In the past, that would display as white text, which is a non-crit. The yellow text is a crit. Then you have your crit weak spot text as well. But those are the patch notes 1.0.22. If you have the game installed, it should have already downloaded for you. I don't know what it's like if you are playing on Game Pass. I don't know if this applies to Game Pass. I have no knowledge of Game Pass, unfortunately. But we'll be testing more of these patch notes here tomorrow on stream, so please do check me out on Twitch. Same name, twitch.tv/ItalianSpartacus. And we'll be showing off the Thunderhammer. We'll play some Psyker play. We'll show off some Crusher. We'll check out some auto guns, all sorts of fun stuff, and we'll kind of take some community recommendations on what people want to see tested and checked out. Let me know in the comment section below what you feel about this patch. Are you really stoked that we just got a whole ton of hot fixes and balance changes and stuff like that? We don't see brutal momentum or antax on this list at all, meaning that I think that the antax axe with brittle momentum is performing as intended in my mind. Or maybe they've kind of caught that and like, okay, we'll get this on the next patch. So I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to fit into the overall scheme of things. And if they're intending for that weapon to feel so broken, or if they want other weapons to kind of rise up, which I'd prefer, right? I'd rather other weapons got better and not a really good weapon becoming shit. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below what you're excited for, what maybe your favorite patch note is on here. Maybe you're saying, hey, this is the one I've been waiting for, and now I can go play this character or do this thing. But very stoked to see a patch finally. Excited to see what the future of Darktide looks like when we get that crafting, when we get hopefully a difficulty bump, any number of things in the future I am excited for, despite my previous video being feeling a little miffed by the open letter. Like I've said before, I still very much love Darktide, and I play the hell out of it, and I will continue to do so and continue to stream and make content for you guys. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one, and take care.